along to a fantastic event, and as Glenn has said, hopefully this won't be our last one. We've been doing fashion shows here since 1940, since 2014, that's why I'm here. So we used to do them out on the platform, and yeah, very, very different. Hi, we've got a couple of people here nodding. So anyone who's not been to us before, every sort of summer we would have 2 or 3 events on the platform, very big and very, very well attended. And we used to have models wandering up and down. We've had to reduce it down because of circumstances. But I hope you're still going to enjoy it. I hope you're going to find something about it you perhaps didn't know. An outfit that you might think, yes, I've got one of those. I'll just make it back into how it used to look. And then turn up as a reenactor at any of our events. So, here we go. Fashion on the ration. What was it all about? Well, we're heading back to the early period of the Edwardian fashion. 1900s, they were in a sort of idyllic sort of state. War was hovering, but nobody really acknowledged that war was hovering. The middle class and the upper classes, well, they had a very nice lifestyle. They were living in sort of a lot of well sort of presented sort of houses and situations. But the working classes, no, they were having a pretty rough time. Industrialisation had come in, coal mining, slate mining, all the rest of it. And it was the working classes that were really working so hard. And what we're going to look at is some of the fashions that those 1914 people were wearing before the war. You can see the men, very, very smart. I call it buttoned up. I mean, look, how can he move? He's got a collar up to his neck, he's got a tie. Same with this chap. Square shoulders, you don't slouch, you know, you can't have the relaxing outfit that we have on today. Very straight trousers, no turn-ups. Think about that, no turn-ups, because they come in later on. The cane for show, obviously they didn't have osteoarthritis like some of us do, but they obviously had the cane for show. The ladies, again, very slight, very slim, sort of the busts were flattened and they had corsets. So everything was held in, again, very buttoned up, very tight, very correct. Even the children, sort of little dresses, this young person in a little sailor outfit, and they would have been expected to behave. So it was a very, very different world. And what I'm trying to show through fashion is how war changes fashion, basically. We come to this part. This is Edwardian ladies. Can you see how they're now looking a bit masculine? There was a reason for that, and I don't need to really go into explanation too much, because I'm sure you'll hear about that. The hat. Just remember how that other outfit was just now. Sort of very different to how we're now looking here. The bigger hat, more of a sort of a sporting hat. The tie, the straight skirt, and the waist, it sort of dropped a bit. So that was very much about the period. Women were wanting to be heard. Women wanted to have their say. And it all started through the suffragette movement. There were 2 movements, the suffragettes, who were the militant group, and the suffragists. And the suffragists, they wanted the vote, they wanted everything to be, you know, right for women, but they weren't the ones who set fires in buildings or chained themselves to railings. It was the suffragettes who did that. And we've got on this side, we've got the soldiers heading towards the front. And can you see the band on there? That signified that they were suffragettes.
Vote for women! Vote for women! End the oppression now!
There's always one, isn't there?
Vote for women!
You close the doors, you try to get a nice audience, also,
Oh, you would say
and
that.
then we get one of these.
You would.
What's your grouse? What is the problem? And what are you trying to do now with votes for women? What is your
We want the right to vote. We want the right.
Okay.
We want the right that every man that men have.
I think that's right, don't you? Yes, I think women should have the vote. But you know, it was limited. Thank you very much, that's and Alison. I think it was limited. You had to be 30, you had to be a house owner. It didn't matter, you know, it didn't matter if you were young or if you were able to say, I've got money. You had to be a certain age and you had to be a house owner. So there we have the suffragettes, bless them. And they did get the vote after the war, but it took quite a while. And then you've got the soldiers going to the front. This is quite a sad picture because the young men are going off. They've got a little baby here. They're training behind them, and they didn't know what was going to happen. Everybody was so enthusiastic. People were volunteering in their thousands. Young men and young men underage were all volunteering. They didn't know what was going to hit them. Why was it so different? Because of ammunition, because it went from the sort of war that they'd had in the past to an artillery war. You had machine guns, you had heavy artillery, and that really changed the perception of war. So let's have a look at how it changed the fashion. This is how it was in 1910. Okay, very buttoned up, big hats, very smart, middle class, upper class, coming all the way through, very tight, no showing of ankles, very, very petite shoes, and boots. Boots were very fashionable. But just look along to 1916. I know she's in a sporting outfit, but suddenly the hemline's gone up, and boots are being done away with. And then here, it's almost looking like a 1920s outfit. So you've got the whole range from here, very corseted, very tiny, very buttoned up, to here. Here, working in a cotton factory, she's got trousers on, she's got a long skirt here as well, and she's got a long apron. Here you've got somebody working in the beer factory. These young ladies were munitions workers, and I'm sure you know they were called the Canaries. Why? Any idea why? Yeah? Because it turned their skin yellow. The munitions and all the details that were there, they all became yellow. But they must have felt so free, no corsets, and just a big outfit here. And they're looking really happy, aren't they? They're having a good time, they're out and they're earning money. And this young lady, as I say, underneath a vehicle, she's learning to be a mechanic. 1920, when the soldiers came back, the women were expected to go back into their houses. You had a munitions football team. Now we think of women now, and aren't they followed? I mean, they get big crowds, whether it's at Wembley or any of the stadiums now, to follow women's football. That's brilliant. You had cooks as opposed to chefs, and the women workers were coming along to get their food. Hats, you've got all the change in style, 1914, 18, but slowly things are beginning to change. So why? Well, after the war, so many men had lost their lives, or were wounded, or were injured. Some had lost limbs, legs, and there was a problem finding work and jobs. And so everybody wanted to go crazy. The music changed. You had the jazz, 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 da, 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 da. So you had a lot of jazz. You had people wanting, all women, they may have been engaged. Their man was killed, and they wanted to come out and have a good time. So talking about the roaring 20s, hairstyles changed. You can see just how much the costumes changed. Low cut, look at these two, I love them, aren't they wonderful? And the good old pearls, everybody wore pearls. And as an example of that, we've got a young lady here called Anna. Look at Anna now. This is a young lady from the 1920s. So she's wearing a fabulous outfit, it's silk. So it fits her beautifully, but it's loose. It's got a nice actually she's got plenty of movement there, she wants to go dancing. She's got the pearls, yes. And the headband, that was almost a symbol of rebellion. You know, you think about rebellion, whoever they are now, that chain themselves to things. This young lady's got a lovely headband on her sort of chain. The tights, of course, and the high-heeled shoes, she was going to go out and she was going to have a pretty good time. So she just wants to do a little promenade round for us, so we can have a look at the whole view. It's got buttons down the front, which makes it nice and comfortable, and then this tight skirt, which is saying, I'm here, I've arrived, I'm a woman of substance. So thank you very much, Anna, so she heads on now. You get the Labour Corps of Chinese coming across, and their customs would have been here, what they were wearing. And if there was a Chinese woman, you had Chinatown in London, they would have been in these long outfits. And also Japan. Japanese, strangely enough, were on our side in the First World War, so that had an impact on us as well. Into the Depression, rise of National Socialism, Nazi Germany sort of raised its head, threat of war. That was hovering for some years, of course, and then 1939, as we know, it all kicked off. And what happened? Well, of course, outfits changed. Just going back and looking at it a little bit for the 1930s, you had them in their fur coats, a hangover from the 20s. You had this man, again, looking very smart in a suit, but again, quite sort of tight and buttoned up, really. And then the old style from the 20s, and it would change quite dramatically. So let's have a look. 1930s, they're in suits, dresses, quite sort of fitted, but then suddenly shoulder pads started coming in, and it gave them a square look. So you had the lovely waist, the tight waist, and you had the broad shoulders, and that carried all the way through the 1930s. Until here, this is the end of the 30s, 1939, it also starts to look a little bit like the 1950s, don't you think? But go all the way back, and what's the one thing they've all got? Hats and gloves. You didn't go out without a pair of gloves and a hat. That was always the standard. So just going along the line, you can see the hemline going up and down. You can see, the shoulder pads coming in. It still keeps the very straight line until we get to here when it starts to flare out a little bit. Men, very tailored again, very sporty, very correct, wearing a hat and tie. You wouldn't have gone out without your hat and your tie. And tailored again, very tailored, but they've got the shoulder pads, making it nice and sort of quite wide. This is American, and can you see it's a far wider, baggier outfit. It's still with ties, but it's very different to the English or the British outfit, as you can see. And that was effective quite the way through, even in their outfits, their uniforms that they wore. So I put this in because I just wanted to show you how in 20 years things changed. 1920s, ooh, gosh, very naughty. Knitted, very fitting. And then it comes to the 1930s, and we're getting more around to the sort of fashions that we know now for bathing and swimming in. Apart from the bikini, of course, and that came in the 1950s. World War II, threat of invasion, food rationing, that had a big impact on what you could wear, what you could buy, because clothing coupons were issued. 60 for ladies or men, for older, for mature people, for adults, but 66 for children, because children were growing, so they had to have a few extra. So you'd have a few extra points you could have spent on your socks and your shoes. So here we have nice dress pattern. You made a lot yourself. You could go out and buy a simplicity pattern, and then you go into Morgan's and you buy the material. You'd be able to choose your own material, the way you wanted your dress. Men again sporty, but very much in the sort of button-up style, the long coats. And then women, maybe she put that fur collar on to a coat she bought, a fur collar from the 1930s maybe. You would dress up whatever you had, because once rationing started, you were limited on to what you could do. So, if we have a look now, we see some of the dresses. We've got actually Jan coming in a dress that will show you the sort of outfit that these ladies were wearing. So this is very reminiscent of what we're wearing here. The short sleeve, she's got the hairstyle, because hair became very much the prominent feature of women in the 1940s. Earrings and the jewels. She was probably going for a nice cocktail, and maybe she would have had a nice escort with one of her escorts, and it could well have been her friend from the Home Guard, and he's just come off duty, but they're going to go to the Palais de Danse and they're going to have a good time. So we've got Steve in the Home Guard outfit here, and Jan who's just heading off for a good time. So I think give them a nice round of applause. We can see that Anna's got very much that hat. If I just go back, she's got very much the Trilby style hat. So they again were sort of thinking about the military look. They were thinking about how they could emulate what their men or their brothers or whatever were doing. Little handbag there, because carrying her little bits and pieces in. Perhaps she's got a few pence she could go and buy some sweets or something with. She's the younger outfit really, and it's a nice tie, so she's going to do a little turn for you. And can you see the hairstyle, very much in keeping with that period. The shoes again, just a little heel for keeping of comfort. And the gloves, always wore gloves. So very smart, with a little bow on there, so she could sort of look quite nice in it. And she's going to have a little escort off as well. And I think, would Steve mind escorting her off? Oh, I do apologise, I totally forgot. We had the Americans here in Barry, didn't we? Hey, come on Americans, come on Jordan, come on down. So Jordan in his American outfit, and he's going to hover for a moment so we can have a little look, and he's going to escort Anna off. I wonder where they're going to go, perhaps to a tea party, perhaps there's friends that they're going to go and visit. You look after her, young man. I will hear any hanky-panky from you. So thank you very much, Anna, and thank you, Jordan. Looking very, very smart with the outfit. Ration books, as I've mentioned. You have ration books for food. You go through our Second World War kitchen, all the coinages out there, 240 pence in a pound, was it? Something crazy. And it shows you all about. So do look at our museum if you haven't had a chance to afterwards. The rags, everybody saved their rags because they'd be converted into things. Certain materials weren't available. Nylon that had been in the 1930s, suddenly that was being used for parachutes and other items for the war. Wool, yes, you could still get wool if you were lucky, but just remember a lot of the ships were being sunk, so wool coming from Australia, New Zealand, etc., you weren't getting that, so you really had to think about what you had. Perhaps a 1930s sweater, you cut it down, you make it into something for your child, or you'd unpick it. I remember my mother unpicking stuff, and then me holding my hands out and having it wound around my hands, and then she would knit something for me. And my first bathing costume, and this is true, it was a jumper, and it had raglan sleeves, not one there, which was like a seam up here, little short sleeves. The sleeves were taken out, it was turned upside down, where the head went through was sewn up. I put my legs through the gusset, through the two bits there. My mother put 2 yellow straps, it was yellow by the way, she put 2 yellow ribbons crossed at the back. That was my first bathing costume when I was about 4, I think. So, oh yes, I remember it well. See what it's done to me, it's caused all sorts of problems having a strange bathing costume. So, looking again, these were the coupons. 60 coupons, the same, children had an extra 10, so 10, actually it was 70. And can you see some of the things? If I just have a look up closely. For the women here, I think somewhere here, a nightie would be 5 for a child, 6 for an adult. Pyjamas, 8 and 6 for a child. Collars were 1. 2 handkerchiefs were 1 coupon. So you'd be very careful about blowing your nose and whether you've lost your handkerchief, wouldn't you? But that really gives you an idea. And it was you couldn't, unless you black mark it, you couldn't really get away from it. So that was it. These were the ration books, and they were coloured for each month. So once you'd used your orange bit, you had to wait for the next month before you could use your purple bit. The pattern. Now this would be the American influence, I think, because certainly that would have been what we had here in this country. And you knitted your bathing costume. I remember it well. So there we are. And the child, you would knit a little costume for the child as well. The older woman's fashion, of course, they would have done something perhaps in the 1930s, and they would have had something on here. So here we have. From the little, she had perhaps made a frill, perhaps it was a long dress and she cut that off and put a frill here, did a little bit of embroidery on the top there, but looking very smart indeed. And to give you an idea, we're going to go through the children quickly here. So, yeah, 1930s children, again very buttoned up, long socks, very sensible shoes, fashion of the era really, the straight skirt, the jacket just does 1 button, the Revers collar, and the hat. That would be like a saucer hat, but that would be very much, and can you see she's got, if we have a little turn, she's got the snood. Snood became very popular for holding the hair in place, and again the hairstyle very much of the period. Gloves, what's she carrying? She's carrying a gas mask case. Now that became very useful, especially for ladies in uniform, and they would put all their makeup and stuff in it, because they were in uniform and they couldn't really have fun and carrying all the stuff in their pockets. Fabulous shoes, they would have been of the period again, and gloves, as we've said. So thank you so much, and Alison. Would like to make, we're going to have we've got another American. Oh my word, and he's chewing the gum. So hi there, let's have another word. So can you explain a little bit about who you are and what you are, please?
Flyboy. Well, I have this with this. A flyboy. An airman. From the 100th Bombardment Group, Thorpe Abbots, up north, as you might say. Yes. So this is a nice leather jacket the Americans also well turned out, better than the British.
He's probably going to take for a nice cup of tea, or you're going to go for something a bit stronger. You maybe go and find a cocktail bar somewhere, or the Trocadero. You be careful, you look after her again. We want to see her safely home.
Okay,
And before blackout, please make sure that she's back home before blackout. Okay, thank you, Glenn. Thank you, So, looking at some of the things, surprisingly, there was what we now have as charity shops. They actually had clothing shops for children. If you were in the Second World War, your outfit, if you outgrew it, they could go into one of these shops and another child would come along and have that outfit. So there's nothing new in charity shops. We think there is. But I don't know if any of you saw something, was it Woman 46 or something, that they did a programme and Victoria Wood played a part. And that was all time for the charity shops. The Liberty bodices. Oh yes, I remember Liberty bodices. And I felt so grown up when I had one undid all the way down, and they were little sort of rubber buttons. And they were nice when they were new. They were little warm, cosy things you put on. You really, really felt smart. Can you see this? This is giving a classic example. A young man here. This is what you'd have been like at the beginning of the war. And if you hadn't had extra coupons, this is how you'd have finished up at the end of the war, looking rather strange with very, very short trousers on. So that's why they had the extra coupons. This is very smart. A lot of it's American. But you know there's something here which, if we have a look, I'm not sure if I can see. Yes, here. Pop socks. Now we think pop socks are something of our era. No? 59 cents, there they are, they've got top socks on, but they are American, so nothing new under the sun, is there? Oh dear, 2 coupons for your passion killers. So that was the sort of bloomers that ladies wore. You didn't have all the fancy, well, you did, because you could buy or you could get silk from some of these parachutes. And then some of the younger ladies, shall we say, they would make these rather nice outfits. But that was would you really waste 2 coupons on one of them? Oh, I don't know, perhaps you would. Let's have a look. You wanted to keep up your appearances. You couldn't find the stockings like I've got today, which have got the seams up because they were made of nylon, and nylon was being used for the war effort. So ladies actually had to make it themselves. And you've got a friend here who's putting a line up the back of the legs here, and they put gravy browning on, didn't they, to make their legs look brown. And there's an RAP, she's just about to go on duty and she's putting her lippy on. And then this lady, she has managed to get stockings. Perhaps she knew an American, but they certainly brought the nylons over there. They were dead keen, and they certainly looked beautiful. They really did. Thinking about weddings, well, pre-war, you could dress up and look fancy. During the war, well, you didn't have access to anything, did you? So if you were getting married, it would be a good old suit, smarten up with the hat, and the man would be in his suit as well. Barbara Cartland, now we know her for her stories of for wearing pink, and her stories were always about love and sort of nice. She did something really special during the war. Women were having a problem. All these ladies were in uniform. They'd all signed up. 17, you could choose which you went into. WAFs, ATS, whichever, or the Navy, or the women's WAFs. Yeah. So, or nursing. If you were 18, you didn't have a choice. You'd be a tick list. That one, that one, that one, that one, that one. So you would go where you were told. 17, you could choose. So what did she do? Well, she noticed all these girls were having a problem, and so she had an idea. There was a couple of wedding dresses advertised in a magazine called The Lady, and that's still in being today, I think. So you still get The Lady. It's quite a sort of middle class thing. And she saw these 2 wedding dresses were being at a very reasonable price. So she bought them. And she said to people, the Board of Trade wouldn't give these ladies, when they wanted to get married, any extra coupons. Which seemed a bit mean, because they were actually in uniform and they wanted to try and get married in white. So she had these 2 dresses, and she said to the RAF organisation, if I donate these 2 dresses into a pool so that ladies can actually hire them, and if they promise to put them back into the pool clean, then that's perhaps something. And they were so enthusiastic, they said, yes please. So bless her, she then bought 17 more wedding dresses. She did get compensated for them, she didn't pay for them all herself. And they went into a pool, and that's what this woman did. So don't just think about her as writing soppy novels and wearing pink. She did this when she was younger during the Second World War rather. Hollywood glamour, my goodness we needed Hollywood glamour, and that actually changed things. It did accentuate the headline, the shoulder line. Who was that? Anybody remember?
Bessie Davis.
That made me a very old joke. Yeah. And then we've got Doris Day. She was a little bit sporty, so you can see her in trousers, cut off slightly. And after the war in 1950s, you remember jeans and things came off and they were cut off a little bit. She's got a sportier shoe on. Then Catherine Hepburn, very much more masculine. She got a straight figure, she wasn't sort of shaped particularly, and she dressed accordingly. And then Lauren Bacall, beautiful Lauren Bacall, married to Humphrey Bogart, of course, and she's looking absolutely the business, this beautiful blouse. My mother had a blouse like that in sort of crepe pink with a big bow, and it looked absolutely stunning. So to add to the glamour, we have got somebody here who will be showing us just how glamorous they can be. I'm running out of fun, so this is Rose, and Rose is in an outfit which really would be considered glamorous. This is very much of the period. The stole, the glitter around the neck, the little hat, the little saucy hat, and she's definitely on the lookout to go to somewhere smart. The dress, she does a little twizzle. We can see it's fitting nicely at the back. It comes in at the waist, but just have a look at the feature here. It actually swings across, and it's got a tie, because it's a false piece it's come across. And it's the bold pattern. They wanted to make everything bright and interesting. And so she's looking rather smart, and that lovely little hat. The makeup, the red lipstick, that became very popular during the 1940s. You wanted to look glamorous. And the hair, she's obviously spent a lot of time doing her hair. She's curled it, she wants to look the business, and it just suits so well with that little hat. And blow me, if we haven't got another American, back he comes again. He's a chance, isn't he? And he's coming back, and what's he going to do? He's got rid of his first lady, and he's going to take this lady out. So he knows all about Glenn. They were actually, can you give us a little bit of idea where the Americans were in the Second World War in this area?
This area, all over the place, like a rash.
But when they came to Barry area?
Yeah, Barry up on the Port Road, 2 camps on the Port Road, over at Surrey. Billeted in local homes. You might have had a yank in your front room or spare room. So, all over Barry. So Barry was surrounded by Americans. Surrey, Port Road, Porthcurry Park, the docks.
Why were they here?
Thompson Street.
Why were they here?
Because of the depot over at Surrey, they were here for that, and they were here also to go to France, to invade and to liberate and set free from Nazis, to denazify Western Europe.
Which year was that?
They arrived in, the large number arrived in 1944. May 44, there were thousands of them in the town.
And I think people then say
No,
that when
I-
they actually went, they didn't know about D-Day, and then suddenly everyone had gone, and all the vehicles had gone, and everywhere was quiet, and nobody had realised. And that was when D-Day, on the 6th of June, obviously.
Yeah.
And what are we celebrating today? VE Day, which
Yeah.
was the following year, wasn't it?
This is
May
right,
the 8th.
isn't it?
So, thank you very much. So, wherever you're going, have a fabulous time.
Yeah.
And make sure that he behaves himself.
Putting on the Ritz.
Okay,
We're
well,
after the
you're
Ritz.
going on to putting on the Ritz. Putting on the Ritz. So, this is Sue. And do you remember what I said about these outfits, this coat? Well, she's actually got one of those on. She's got a trench coat on. So if we just go back, she has got the outfit that I was saying about with the men. I will just switch back again quickly. Can you see it's so very similar to what these men are wearing? And this is a modern day one, really. This is more sort of that you can buy nowadays. But let's look at Sue and what she's wearing. Women's Auxiliary Territorial Service, 1940s. Women, 17 and 18, they were encouraged to actually sign up. And if they chose to go into that outfit, this is what Sue would wear. And she's going to explain a little bit about what she's wearing.
Well, I'm actually wearing, it's a repro, it's not an original one. I mean, to get original ones is very difficult. We have got an original one on the mannequin in the museum, which someone donated to us from their attic. So it's nice to be able to see, but this is generally what they would have worn. And the Queen wore this in the latter years of the war, and she used to be able to work in the ATS, and she actually repaired engines. People used to bring in the vehicles, whatever vehicle it was, and she'd asked her mum and dad, would I be alright to be able to do something, and that was the only thing they allowed her to do, because it meant she was under shelter, so she couldn't be killed, because she was going to be a future queen. And she took it up, and she was absolutely brilliant. She could strip an engine down, repair it, and that's what she did during the later years of the war. And I'm dressed up as that. The only difference is when she's working in a garage, she has to wear all overalls and things like that. But she thoroughly enjoyed it, and she did really, really well. So I'm just dressed up in what you would call an ATS, and I would have done several things during the war, including helping out with the big lights, arch lights that would look out for planes, all different things I would be doing. So, but it was an interesting job, I think, and a lot of the ATS women enjoyed doing it.
Thank you, Sue. What would you have had in your bag there? Would it have been a gas mask or would it have been...
Sadly not.
Lippy.
I mean, they wouldn't know, but
Lippy.
I would either keep
Perhaps
a lipstick.
lipstick, makeup, that sort of thing. But there would have been a gas mask in there.
But
We
we're
have
supposed
to-
to. We're supposed to have a gas mask, but I think a lot of the women in the forces were a bit sneaky. And as time went on, obviously we realised probably gas wasn't going to be an option, but you had to use it. So everybody got rid of it and used them as a handbag. I'm sorry to say, but
Did women have, men have the war medal? Did women get issued with
yeah,
medals?
well, I think so, yeah. I mean,
Oh,
depending on the
yeah,
dress.
yeah,
They have a service
yeah.
medal, They did anything. I mean, First World War, one of the first women to get, was a woman to get the military medal, was a First World War woman, yes. Yeah, very much so. They were all issued with medals at the end. If they did anything brave, then they would get, a military medal or they'd get a VC.
Like you.
Can you just do a little turn? Because you see what she's done with her hair. They couldn't have it loose as the women. They had to be very smart. This was the problem. If you were in uniform, you didn't have the freedom when you were actually in civvies. So a lot of the women went a bit crazy when they came into civvies. They would go up if they were stationed, I don't know, in this part of the world, they'd perhaps go up to Cardiff and have a bit of a rave up there in one of the hotels, because they just had to let their hair down, literally, from being sort of buttoned up, and the things they saw, the things they were aware of, and perhaps losing some of their family as well over in the fighting. So thank you, Sue. Oh, yeah. So if we move on a little phase, well, we've got the Women's Air Force. Do you want to stay there? Oh, right. Oh, sorry. The Women's Air Force and the WAFs, they help with the harvest. So they would have been on airfields, they would have been doing all sorts of things, plotting. We have a lady who used to be very much part of our entourage here, a lady called Eileen Younghusband, who was a filter room girl. She used to get quite snippy about the plotters, because the filter room girls were the ones who actually, when the enemy aircraft were flying over, all the way around the south coast, we had all the radar. And that would come in, all the numbering would come into the filter room, and they had to be very bright, because they had to translate all these numbers into how many aircraft were coming in, what type of aircraft, where they were flying, how high they were, etc. And Eileen Younghusband did that, and the plotters were the ones that you see them pushing around, and they've got hostile, an H, which means hostile, 200 on it, 200 aircraft coming across to bomb Britain. So that was something that the ladies in the Auxiliary Air Force did. If you were a permanent, it was a RAF, a WRAF if you were in the permanent. This is when they joined up just for the duration of the war. Where do you come from? I'm so glad you've come to Barry, because you're going to be safe here. So let's have a little look at this guy. He's got his outfit on, he's got his case, he's probably got just a minimum of clothes, pyjamas maybe, a change of underwear, and then his coupon books would have had to come with him as well, so that whoever took him on would have actually sort of been able to buy stuff. He's got the fabulous hat, maybe his father's hat, maybe he wanted to have something to remember his dad by, and he's got his teddy bear, because that was his comfort. He was going somewhere he didn't know where. Birmingham down to Barry, and then all these strange people. He'd be in a hall somewhere like this, and he'd be standing there, and someone would come along, perhaps like this lady, and say, yes, I think you'll do. You can come and do the garden for me, and you can clean the house. And so he would be taken by this lady. He'd never met her, they would change names. He would maybe be with her for 4 years, and then have to readjust and go back home. There was no sort of counselling in those days. You just got on with it. You didn't sort of, oh, children being so worried about everything. You just, war was war. You were either evacuated or you stayed with your parents. You got bombed, and then you, at the end of the war, 1946, you just picked up where you left off. Just incidentally, how did he get educated? Well, if he came to Barry, the children in Barry would do it for half a day. They'd be in the mornings, the evacuees in the afternoon. So I bet they were quite pleased about that, didn't they? They didn't have a whole day of schooling. And I think all the evacuees eventually got quite friendly with all the locals. A little bit of argy-bargy maybe going on to begin with, but certainly in the end. What have you got in your case? That's interesting.
Gas mask.
Ah, well done you. He's brought his gas mask. But most importantly, he's got his label, because if he got lost, who would know who he was? You had children, as we saw in that previous picture, 4, 5 and 6. They couldn't say, oh yes, I live in Hounslow up in London. They would be lost. So labels were the essential thing. And again, go to our museum. We've got an Anderson shelter there, and we've got a little evacuee in there with his label on. So Sam, what's your name? Jane. Okay, thank you so much. World War, show you the difference in the Second World War. Short skirts, they're kicking football around, very again buttoned up. We have got a picture of one, or a statue of one, if you want to go through a model into our First World War trench, you'll find one there. And there was a nurse's home in Cardiff which was bombed. Women were doing everything. They were riding motorcycles, they were driving vehicles like the Queen when she was Princess Elizabeth. And this lady here, Lee Miller, she's a well-known, she was a very well-known war artist, a war photographer. I'm sure Steve, our fabulous photographer here, would know about her. Very famous picture of her in Hitler's bath. Silhouettes from the 1940s to the 1949, how it changes, square shoulders is getting slightly less, no square shoulders, slightly there, but then we're moving towards the A-line of the 1950s. And I'd like to bring everybody else back on how we started and how we ended up and how it began sort of from the beginning to the end. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you'll enjoy going around the rest of our museum. Thank you very much.